There existed no need on Caladan to build a physical paradise or a paradise of the mind. We could see the actuality all around us, and the price we paid was the price that men always paid for achieving paradise in this life. We went soft, we lost our edge. The Sardaukar warriors are an iconic and elite military force within the service of the Carino Emperor. This force was feared by all houses within the Lanzarad. For a majority of their existence, no other force could match their training and ability. In this video, we will be reviewing the rise and the fall of one of the most powerful military forces in the Dune storyline. The origins and the rise of the Sardaukar started on a planet called Salusa Secundus. Salusa Secundus lacked the resources and suffered from a harsh environment, ranging from -45 to 60 Celsius, and if we convert that temperature to Fahrenheit, it would range from -49 to 140 degrees. The planet's soil lacked nutrients, and only the strongest crops would survive the planet's summers, which were scorching. A portion of their food came from domesticated form of buffalo, which supplied the population with meat and skin. In the beginning, the Sardaukar used to be tribesmen named the Sardu. The tribe was militaristic due to their desire to survive. The Sardu and the other tribes on the planet constructed their weapons by using iron, which was scarce. Due to this factor, they were in constant warfare over iron. The Sardu formed a Spartan-like culture, where combat training started at a young age. At the age of 6, combat training started where the children were given a knife and instructed daily on the usage of the weapon. Sparring matches were common and drawing blood was encouraged. Fighting to the death wasn't uncommon among the adolescents, but was forbidden among the adults. This process helped weed out the weak when they were young, where a majority of them did not live past the age of 12. When the warriors became an adult, it was considered wasteful to lose a warrior when they could have been used on a campaign to gain more territory and resources. The Sardu were able to carve out a large domain of territory, which slowly became the Sardaukar. The Sardaukar kept the Sardu culture, which favored the strong. Their training made them a master swordsman and deadly at hand-to-hand combat. It was stated that the Sardaukar were compared to the Gina's 10th level fencers and their cunning to the Bene Gesserit. Some would say that their rise didn't start until their galactic neighbors such as the House Mogarian recognized the Sardaukar as an elite force that was tough, ruthless, and devoted to their commanding officers. These attributes made them great at mercenary work for factions that needed the extra muscle for their campaigns after the Butlerian Jihad. Mercenary work allowed the Sardaukar to experience life outside of their planet and experience fighting a war at a grander scale. After the conquest, the Sardaukar had the time and the experience to grow their own territory, which started their own conquest of the galaxy. By using captured ships, they were able to seize a great amount of territory from their past employers. After the Butlerian Jihad, space travel was slow, which resulted in the Sardaukar using meteor strikes, which gave the Lanzarad time to prepare for whatever they threw at them. The defining battle of the conquest was called the Battle of Corin. The Sardaukar were victorious, but if they continued with their war, they would have an empire of dead subjects. Through the treaty, the Sardaukar leader was crowned the first Pradeshar Emperor. His power was derived from legions of battle-hardened soldiers. Almost all the Lanzarad signed the treaty besides House Ginseng. House Ginseng was ready to fend off meteor strikes, but the Sardaukar had something else planned for them. They sent small units to paralyze their defenses, and once they were vulnerable, their troops moved in and removed all defenders and captured high-level military leaders and politicians, proving their abilities as a technical force. After they crushed their enemies, the Sardaukar started to falter. They were no longer bound to the homeworld's harsh environment, and they were able to migrate to planets with better climates and contain more resources. They kept their culture and tradition alive, but without their constant struggle to survive, they were missing one of the huge attributes of what made them Sardaukar. In 385, a few houses joined together to form the Lisha Confederation. This rebellion launched a planned attack and was able to take control of designated forts and outposts. The rebels were able to take a few Sardaukar alive, but these elite warriors did not forget who they were. When the rebels tried to offer their captive hostages to the Emperor, the response was, "Let them drink blood." Some imprisoned Sardaukar interpreted this message by tearing out their throat with their fingernails, while others attacked their captors. Eventually, the Sardaukar were able to get their revenge by wiping them all out. After the war, the Empire had to deal with a huge stream of prisoners. Sadir III took control of the throne after the rebellion and decided to use Salusa Secundus as a prison planet. In the beginning, majority of the prisoners were soldiers with a few civil leaders, and of course a few other classes of individuals as well. Sadir III, who came up with using Secundus as a prison planet, was assassinated a year into his rule and was replaced by Walik I. Walla came to the realization that he could use the prisoners as future soldiers, then allowing them to eventually be killed by raids from the native tribes. While others would probably use the prisoners as a workforce, Wallach imagined recreating the Sardaukar of old, who survived in a harsh environment and became combat veterans at an early age due to the constant warfare on the planet. He ordered his warriors to give the prisoners weapons and training. They were taught the ruthless fighting techniques and were equipped with a fair amount of weapons once the Sardaukar left. These newly trained prisoners did not hold a grudge against the Sardaukar, but they were thankful and admired them for the protection they received while being trained. When the Sardaukar came back looking for recruits, there was no hesitation from the colonists to join them. In the beginning, the mortality rate was extremely high, which encouraged conquest to replace the lost prisoners. These new prisoners were fierce, and a small war broke out between the original prisoners and the new ones. The original prisoners were victorious. It was only until then their lives started to resemble the old Sardu tribes. The Sardaukar were strict on who they would draft, only the strongest could join. The irony behind this whole experiment was the soldiers' main goal is to support and protect the Empire, who originally imprisoned them or their ancestors. Even though the Sardaukar sound like a well-oiled machine, they did have their issues. They require constant warfare and conquest to repopulate Secundus and to keep their warriors' experience. There was corruption among their officers and leaders, and of course you can't forget that their training seemed to be rigid and possibly too reliant on their soldiers' ruthlessness. There seemed to be an issue with the Sardaukar's ability when the House Atreides was able to train a small military force that was compared to match the Sardaukar's skill. It proved that another force could produce the same ability and loyalty without forcing their soldiers to be raised in a harsh environment and go through constant warfare. For me, it pointed out that it was possible in the Dune universe for a faction to build an elite force from drafting from its own population, then drafting a brainwashed individual from an imprisoned planet. Eventually, the Sardaukar met their match in the Fremen. Even before the Fremen received additional training from Paul and his mother, they were already accomplished warriors. They were also a militaristic society like the Sardaukar, but both factions differed from each other when it came to philosophy. The Sardaukar believed that only the strong survived, while the Fremen focused on the survival of the tribe. In many ways, this philosophy made the Fremen more effective as a unit. Granted, the Sardaukar were completely loyal to their officers and would follow any order, but they weren't physically ready to fight a force that was completely united together. The old, the women, and the children were trained to fight and die for the tribe. Once the Fremen were trained in the weirding way and had Paul leading them, there was a low possibility that the Sardaukar would be able to fight against a force that obtained better training than them and was led by a more accomplished leader. Of course, I have to mention that there will be spoilers ahead for individuals that have only watched part 1 of Dune, so you might want to turn off this video now to avoid any spoilers. Okay, now let's begin. At the end of book 1 of Dune, the Sardaukar lost and Paul became emperor. They were reduced to a legion of 30,000 men, which was pitiful. Of course, they eventually did revolt, but they were crushed. For me, a majority of the reason why the Sardaukar lost was due to hiding behind the legends of their success. They became stagnant, and it's been a long time since they've been forced to face a dominant faction. I'm curious to find out what's your thoughts about the reason why the Sardaukar fell. Let me know in the comment section below. If you like this video, then please like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to click on the notification bell to keep yourself updated with my channel. Also, check out these other 2 videos if you enjoyed this one. And please check out my socials as well for more sci-fi content. Thank you for watching Utopian Broadcast, and I'll see you next time on my channel. Thank you.